processing, which could go all the way from order aggregation, order management system to all the way to shipment delivery. Whereas during checkout is anything when you add to cart and when you go to the order creation state, what all we do over there could be reducing checkout times, cart recovery, payment processing, address verification, fraud detection, a lot of things on that part. And obviously something that we just recently started is on the pre-checkout phase, essentially where we are trying to learn all the data that we have collected and the insights that we have generated across checkout and post-checkout spaces. How can we help you in the pre-checkout journey, whereas where you can help you with ad optimization, marketing, product pricing, recommendations, offer combos, and so on and so forth. So interesting products that we are building at Swift, and happy to connect later in case you guys are interested in knowing more about us. But a little bit about how our journey started. All the founders here come from e-commerce background. Typically, we were doing similar things in different organizations, and the Indian industry is growing so fast that we realize there's something that we need to do, which brings me to the point that how e-commerce in India has grown is phenomenal, and what is expected to happen in the next 5 to 10 years is something that is still, I would bet my money on this, because if you look at from a GDP contribution, e-commerce is probably one of the fastest growing sectors outside of fintech and edtech. Edtech being growing in the last 2 years, but e-commerce, I think we are in the right place. If you look back 2013, what happened? You got horizontal marketplaces just setting up the e-commerce infrastructure in place, right? You got Myntra, Snapdeal, Amazon, Flipkart coming into space, trying to develop and cultivate the culture of online commerce. And then in 2017 or so, you've got a whole new brand of social commerce with Meesho leading the way. You've got now Dealshare, City Mall, Kutlu doing a lot of these stuff. But I believe social commerce was an opportunity area which was unlike what typical e-commerce gave in. And then obviously in the last 3 4 years, I think so the rise of D2C and vertical marketplaces has been a key driver for how e-commerce is growing, not just around marketplaces, but through the D2C channel and through other avenues of social commerce and conversational commerce. And I think now the buzzword that's going around the market is quick commerce, right? So hoping in the next 8 years or so, each of these avenues that have been created over the last decade or so, we will penetrate further, not just from capability standpoint, but what all we can offer via these channels and avenues. So really hopeful that the future penetration of e-commerce across these channels is going to drive growth in the coming years. But yeah, really looking forward for the next 7 8 years, because e-commerce, the whole e-commerce 3.0 journey that started not just in the Western countries but also in India, is how brands are emerging, different avenues are emerging where you can essentially do your commerce without having to depend on a marketplace for your discovery and sales. I just broken this whole timeline in two perspectives. One is the pre-pandemic era and what has happened so far, right? Though the numbers don't look too great on the chart, but there were some things which were very important for securing how e-commerce will grow in this particular decade. The first point being businesses creating a digital presence. I think so. Apart from Google listing, there was nothing significant that was happening for businesses. Maybe there is in India Mart listing that was there, but now we have reached a point where businesses have a digital identity, and Flipkart has to be given the credit for driving a lot of that. But platforms like Shopify, WooCommerce, and newer platforms like Dukaan have done that thing where they have allowed O2O movement, which is offline to online movement. And now I believe this solving for this has been very critical for any e-commerce to operate. The next important point that we saw was how independent e-commerce infrastructure got established. Why I am emphasizing on independent is obviously Flipkart, Amazon solved for payments and logistics on their own. But if you look at how Razorpay came along, how delivery has established, they've allowed commerce to thrive outside of closed net marketplaces, which is very critical. This decentralization of commerce has been largely delivered because of these infrastructure players that have come in and set up across the stack. And last but not the least, I think the whole consumption behavioral change that got seeded from wanting to shop from Kirana stores local, you are now focusing on buying via quick commerce app like a Dunzo or Zepto. Now that defines that there is trust instilled in consumers, typically an industry, society, a culture which is very dependent on interactions and conversations. We are now able to not put a face to it and do commerce seamlessly is something that I personally feel that that's been a drastic development over the course of the last decade or so. Now, obviously, the years to come and what's just happened since the post-pandemic, 2 years have gone by. We are seeing enormous amount of growth year on year happening. Uh, you've got quick commerce, which has sort of become a vertical in itself, and brands are rushing towards it. How do I champion quick commerce? And I believe quick commerce is going to become something pivotal for at least for in the urban population standpoint. If brands are not focusing on this, eventually there will be a point where growth might be a challenge for them because quick commerce is key to uh, capitalizing on the urban population. Vertical marketplaces are doing something which is probably going to reduce CAC for a lot of brands because they are solving for brand discovery, which typically now had to be done via horizontal marketplaces, and it's costlier if you are to be listed on an Amazon and a Flipkart and you have to drive sales there versus driving on vertical marketplaces. It's better to be listed on vertical marketplaces because you get focused attention, you are amongst your peers, and brand discovery becomes much more simpler. WhatsApp led commerce to blitzscale outreach. What this means is earlier, if you were focused on only solving for a certain sect of population via marketplaces or D2C, WhatsApp is allowing you to reach to the remotest areas of India and have a conversation with shoppers who could potentially become the next billion opportunity for you guys, right? So WhatsApp is pivotal in this. In fact, I would say Instagram is also becoming key. So recently I heard Facebook put payments into Instagram, which is going to let brands be able to get payments directly from shoppers. This is something that's happening in the US, but definitely something that will follow through in India. And that conversational commerce that we are expecting is going to just improve as the years go by. If you look at how numbers have grown, and you can go to most of this data is open sourced, you can look at how online shoppers have grown and the rate at which we are growing in the next 3 years or so. We expect it to double in terms of right now. India is having about 15 to 20 crores of active e-commerce shoppers. By 2025, we expect this number to be roughly about 40-50 crores. So a huge online shopper base is opening up, and something that we're really looking forward to because it just helps you solve for growth. Plus, you get new consumers who are trying to buy and discover brands, right? So that's not something that you cannot put a price to, and really looking forward to it. Very important point, not a lot of people talk about it, and it's a little counterintuitive also. Order values are actually going up compared to going down, which is what the thesis says. Like a lot of people are trying to invest in discounting and trying to capture the market, but actually if you look from how inflation has gone by now, the order value has been coming up across categories on different channels. It's actually going up 15% to 20% year on year, which is essentially going to increase your revenues, increasing the whole industry market size in itself. So tackling the first question, how important is quick commerce and should you be investing in it? If you look at how Google captures this information in the last 6-7 years, right? If you look at how apps have been searched regarding to quick commerce, there has been a very steep uptake in the last 2 to 3 years. And in specific cities, it's become a de facto shopping behavior and specific to some verticals. Now, if you look at home care and food and beverages, what used to be from an online perspective more focused on marketplaces or D2Cs, now quick commerce is leading the way. Now, you don't typically go to a Kirana store to buy a bottle of Coca-Cola, you typically order online, right? Food and beverage is one thing. Home care, you've probably seen brands like Biko and Dr. Octo come up. All of them are capitalizing their reach to the brand to the end consumers via the quick commerce channel. And I think as time goes by, we'll see deeper penetration of quick commerce across beauty and wellness also, and other categories as they come along. But one thing is very clear: anything which needs instant gratification, quick commerce is going to be very pivotal, very core. But at the same time, this is largely restricted to urban cities, so this trend might not follow through pan India. How do you go about doing it, right? There's a 4 point framework that we built this after talking to about 100 plus brands. They said four things is very important when you go on setting up a quick commerce strategy. Even though the way quick commerce apps work is they take in their inventory from you guys, you still need to have a localized inventory concept, which means you need to have distributed warehousing, which can help you with quick commerce fulfillment as well as your pan India national fulfillment, right? So distributed warehousing is key to enabling better quick commerce. Plan your inventory to focus on limited SKUs. Don't have to go and enlist all your products. Focus on your best selling products, maybe two, three at max, because what we believe is replenishing them is very critical. And if you start listing, your inventory planning goes for a toss, and you'll not be able to accommodate or you will not be able to maintain your positioning in the quick commerce channels. Very few people speak about it, but I think this is very critical, is how do you integrate tech stack in your quick commerce channels, right? Right now, there are no technology startups or offerings out there that allow you to do this right off the bat. But this is something, as the years go by, I think startups will start focusing on this more. So how do you bring all your inventory planning to fulfillment planning to, your complete tech stack to be well integrated with quick commerce channels, right? And lastly, be smart about where you list yourselves. You don't have to be there everywhere, right? If you are, let's say, in a home care segment, Instamart might not be the best option there, because not a lot of people are buying home care on Instamart. Food and beverages makes a lot of sense there, but if you are a home care brand, you might want to get yourself listed in Dunzo and Zepto. So be smart on how you list about your quick commerce channels, on your quick commerce channels. Now, as I mentioned earlier, quick commerce is just for urban cities. What's next? How is the next growth that we had just seen in a few slides back going to be realized, right? And something which came out as a revelation as I was putting my thoughts together was that surprising Bharat India, we don't talk enough about Bharat India. We talk a lot about urban cities, tier one cities, tier two cities. If you look in 2019 to 2022, you would see the way e-commerce has distributed itself. It's practically reaching almost all corners of India, right? And what used to be hotspots of e-commerce, which was typically metropolitans, on your left hand side, you would see on the right hand side now there are more hotspots coming up. You'd see tier two cities taking the charge on how e-commerce is growing. In some sense, if I were to say, maybe urban cities is reaching a certain saturation from a growth perspective. You will not see as much as it growing as what Bharat India is growing. And this is something that is very critical to understand, because Bharat India has its own persona of how it operates, right? And one of those personas is it relies on COD, right? And that is something that we'll cover in slides to come. But what is this opportunity that we are talking about in Bharat India? So if you look, and here we have classified tier one and tier two cities as urban India. From a pin codes coverage perspective, tier one cities only cover 1,500 pin codes, whereas Bharat India covers 15,000 plus pin codes. Like it's in a different scale altogether. And the population that resides, urban India, tier one cities, only 10 crores. So just imagine, with so many brands coming up, with marketplaces focusing, 10 crore population people, so many brands targeting them, it's just going to be a chaos there, right? So inadvertently, you'll start moving from the left hand side to the right hand side as your market and your growth get started saturating in tier one cities. And if you look at penetration also, 60% penetration has already been done in tier one cities, right? So it's not like there's a lot of headroom for further growth in terms of online shoppers coming from tier one cities. You have to operate with those many those many online shoppers itself. But if you look at Bharat, India, which is 100 crore population, just less than 2% of penetration, I believe the opportunity of addressable market in years to come is going to lie in that particular section. And currently, if you look from numbers perspective, also just 6 crores coming from tier one, whereas 4 crores in tier two, and 2 crores from tier three plus. And the growth rate for these are it's like off the charts. Like you would cry if your numbers are growing 15% year on year from the number of consumers you have at that scale. I think so. Bharat India is the key to unlocking e-commerce opportunity. As I earlier said, right, COD is one key attribute of how Bharat India operates. And if you are looking to target on this, you will have to put it at the center of your growth strategy. So this is a brand that we work with very closely across channels. They're not just D2C, they sell across channels. And what we realized that 58% of their orders still come from urban India, but there are very peculiar behaviors that we have seen. Prepaid orders are only largely coming from marketplaces. So the D2C channel is still heavily dependent on cash on delivery. And 60% of these 58% orders that you see from urban India are still cash on delivery. That means the concept of that prepaid market growing. And I would say COD is a loosely termed word. I would rather say POD, which is pay on delivery. So UPI comes under COD category. It's moving towards that, right? You will still continue to see cash on delivery dominate the better half of this decade. And if you do not have the pay on delivery concept at the heart of your strategy, it's going to be very difficult for brands to scale. And if you're looking to scale in Bharat India, and if you look at the numbers on Bharat India, as intuitive it is, majority of these orders are COD orders. And net this particular brand has 65% plus orders coming from COD. Now, obviously COD is key to growth and you should have it, but every coin has two sides, right? Your growth has COD on one side, and the challenger to COD is RTO. And I think so we'll be spending a lot of time on how RTO is disrupting the customer delight that you as a brand want to propagate, right? NPS scores have dipped for so many brands as soon as they have gone live with cash on delivery, or they put cash on delivery at the heart of it, primarily because of RTO being a challenger over there. So, brands, if you look at Dukan. This is one of the founders of Dukan. He's talking about 33% of his orders are COD orders are getting returned back. Razorpay has written a blog about how RTO is a pain, right? It's a bane to e-commerce existence, but it's something that you can't do away because that's where the majority of the orders lie. And consumers and merchants and brands, all of them are dissatisfied on how do I tackle this problem, right? So we've spent some time, and because this is something that we solve at Swift very core, we are able to bucketize RTO as a problem statement into multiple aspects. And three buckets that we have identified are: A, genuine RTOs. This is something that you can't do away with. You have to live with it. This is the reality. And if you're not planning your business, which means pricing, inventory stocking, and all those aspects to accommodate for these, it is going to be difficult. So if you say 33% is overall RTO rate for COD orders, about a fourth of those are genuine orders, genuine RTOs, which you can't do. Could be that buyer does not need it. There was some payment issue. The delivery address that was put is so far from the hub, so it was marked as out of delivery area. The second category of RTOs that we have seen are driven by consumers, right? And this is where it starts getting interesting. Is there are a lot of fake or ghost orders that come along. So in fact, a couple of years back, or maybe I think so 12 months back only, there was a huge coverage that media did on how Meesho gets ghost orders, and they had to set up a team that dedicatedly focuses on fraud detection of fake orders, right? So there are a lot of ghost orders that keep coming around. So how do you detect that? How do you identify all these incorrect addresses, phone numbers incorrect, address and pin code doesn't match? So there are a lot of aspects about consumer which drives about 30 to 35% of those RTOs that are happening in COD are largely driven by consumers. And last, but I think so, this is the most important bucket, and something that brands who are here will closely relate to, is the courier driven issues, right? NDR is probably one hell term that we'll need to live with, but that exists, and it's not going to go away anywhere soon. So you'll have to deal with things like get shipments getting delayed, fake attempts happening, incorrect NDR reasons coming. How do you tackle this, and how do you become successful in this whole journey, right? So if you look at how we are approaching in helping brands use intelligence and automation to solve, if you look at this particular part, from all the way from carts to the outcome that you desire, right? You go through multiple points of rigid checkout. How do you detect anomalies in the orders that are coming? How do you confirm orders? Do I set up a team that is going to be calling, going to be spending time confirming these orders? And how, which couriers do I work with, right? Big question. India has probably 15 couriers operational at any point in time. Which ones do I work with, right? And this conundrum has led to certain calls being taken by brands, which has led to high RTOs, right? So if you look at the kind of dilemmas that people have been there, how do I put dynamic COD, or should I just remove COD? How do I eliminate junk and fake orders? How do I keep confirming orders? So should I set up a team or outsource it to probably a BPO kind of model, or outsourced agency who can probably just call and confirm orders? And how does my ops team manage all these NDRs and fake NDRs that are coming, right? So what we have done is, across this value chain, we've identified four aspects which we will double down as we go along. Is profiling consumers is very key, and profiling consumers can help you with personalization on checkouts. Verifying addresses is very key, because India, if you look at in RTOs, a decent chunk of RTOs that happen is because of address issues. And how do you tackle it even before orders are dispatched is something key for most brands. COD verification, it's something up and coming. We'll talk a little bit more about how brands are doing it, but COD verification, prepaid conversion, these are tactics to improve your prepaid conversions, reduce RTO, so on and so forth. And lastly, I think, how do you have a very lean ops team which is effective, focusing on customer success rather than doing mundane operational activity day in day out? So how do you focus on performance driven courier allocation, right? So jumping on to the first part of profiling driven personalization, what we have done here is we've used historical data and current live consumer behavior. So how a person is creating a cart, checking out, how they have done previously in the past. We are able to profile a consumer into bad consumers and good consumers. Now, as a brand, you should focus on how do I keep getting good consumers, and how do I weed out bad consumers, and thereby solve for the top of the funnel. If your orders are very qualified right up in the funnel, you will have lesser issues coming down the funnel, which is around RTOs and all, right? So how do you solve for this? This is something that's very interesting, and a lot of brands are doing it, and I think there are startups coming around trying to solve in these aspects also. I've just put an example of how we do it for Fitster, the brand that we work with. What we have done is we have done personalization of the checkout, where what we do is, depending on how he wants to run his orders and how he wants to source in orders, for bad shoppers, we either do not show them any COD option, or we have a OTP based verification process, which essentially creates a fiction for bad shoppers to not create junk or fake orders, right? So having personalization based on who the consumer is, right? You're trying to focus on that and drive personalization of checkout basis, that you're trying to. So in fact, Mintra does this excellently. So one of my close friends, she was trying to shop the other day, and when she tried to hit cash on delivery as an option, it said, hey, you need to pay 150 rupees extra because you have returned back 80% of the orders in the last 6 months. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to disincentivize or penalize the consumer if you're going to be not accepting the order, or you're going to be just trying to place a junk order, right? So there might be an initial hit where you might see number of orders reduce, but the kind of orders that will come through will be more qualified with a better delivery rate percentage, and then you don't have to deal with the problems of RTO percentage as it's solved right up front. The next part is address verification, and the key point on how we solve it at Swift. And this is something that is very close to my heart, as in my previous stints, corporate stints, also something that I've worked extensively here is validating address before your order dispatch can reduce almost 15 up to 15%, right? Means that's something that is big. If you are able to reduce your RTOs by 15% by solving for one thing, which is just address, that's something that I'll take any day. Now, how do you solve for address? There are three large parts in address, which is the address line, the full address line, where you write, okay, this building number, address, and locality name. Then you have pin codes, and you have city, state, country, right? Now, what we have seen many a times, and all these examples that I'm showing are live examples, which we have recorded in our system. You get people who are putting gibberish addresses. Now, this could be people trying to create fraud orders, trying to just test something. So they end up writing things like XYZ Bangalore. Then you have incomplete addresses like Lodi Road, New Delhi. Lodi Road, New Delhi is a huge area. No wonder the courier guy will not even take the effort to getting it delivered, because where in that particular area is he going to be calling the customer and asking, because he has to plan. There's a concept of route planning that comes along, so he's going to just pass on the customer is not available. Then you have got incoherent addresses like Darya ke Baju mein. I mean, this is something that in remote towns you keep seeing a lot here, behind temple, dam ke piche, dam ke baju mein, and all these things keep coming. How do you identify that these addresses are actually not coherent and it's not going to make any sense for delivery, right? Now, the delivery address and the city sometimes don't match. So if you look at this particular example, the address up to Sonwar Bagh is of Srinagar, but he has put the city as Jammu. Now, this could have happened because of multiple reasons. Could be because of autofill problem, could be because of, or the intent of the consumer is all fraudulent in nature. But what these courier companies are going to do, they're going to send the product to Jammu, and then they'll realize, oh shit, this product doesn't, the address is not even in Jammu, it's in Srinagar, and they'll just RTO it, right? So that's something that goes to in pin code. So address and pin code needs to match. So if you look at this is a Bangalore address, but the pin code is somewhere in Maharashtra. So these simple hygiene checks can help brands solve a lot of RTO related issues, and this is something that we feel that brands need to focus a lot on. Mistyped pin code errors is one of the most common address issues. Typically, when people are typing fast, they end up putting one digit wrong or one digit into swaps. So in high population area, this kind of an issue can lead to 30-kilometer change in the delivery address. In a low population area, somewhere like in Uttarakhand, this could mean like 150-kilometer difference. Nowhere, like, let's be fair, like I can't expect the courier company to deliver this, even if we put NDRs, right? They work on a certain model. They're not going to be moving around just because you said, hey, sorry, pin code. So these are some things where for a fact consumers are not going to change behavior. You also know that courier companies are not going to dance to your tune. So what do? You build capabilities, or you leverage capabilities wherein you are able to weed out these kind of problems. And that comes to how there are a lot of APIs out there which provide address verification as a capability. And I think it's key that even if you end up spending a rupee or two more on these APIs, this is something that you should definitely invest in. It's also three problems. It checks for address coherence, means if someone's putting gibberish information, it's going to outrightly say this address doesn't make sense. Second, it verifies whether the address is complete. Like just putting a street address is not enough. You need more accurate landmark or building number or something of that sort to make it deliverable, right? And lastly, doing a simple pin code correctness check. The address that's been inputted, is it in that pin code or not? If it is not in the pin code, how courier companies is going to just pick it up from your location and first send it to the pin code and then figure out whether the address is correct or not. So in this whole process, he's not going to worry about the pin. It's on some different pin code. I should push it there. He's just going to mark it as RTO. Now, coming to the interesting part, this is less to do with any external dependencies. It's more to do with you and your consumers. More communication, effective communication is something that we keep prescribing to a lot of brands. But just because a COD order is placed doesn't mean that they are going to buy. You in Bharat, India, the person placing the order and the person who's going to pay or the person who's going to receive might not be the same people at all. So there are multiple touch points that you need to worry about. So just, let's say an order has been placed. So in typically rural India, it could be a child or someone elderly, or could be the homemaker of the house who's going to be actually placing the order. But the phone number provided is probably the bread earner of the house. And what eventually happens, the bread earner thinks, oh, this product I have not ordered, why is it coming up? And he's going to cancel the order. So this at least gives you right upfront understanding whether the order should be shipped or not. And what when since we have deployed this technology across a lot of brands, we have seen 5% of COD orders get cut off right up there when we send this message, which just saves you the hassle of sending the parcel all the way to the location and then getting it back. Your inventory is stuck up. You end up spending a ton of money on shipping. So it just rather just get that notification here. And let's say someone cancels, you can just give a call. I think that makes a lot more sense than just randomly dispatching thousands of orders without even knowing whether the consumer's intent is there to buy it or not, right? So I keep saying this to a lot of people in my team also. A COD order is an order, it's not a sale until it's delivered. So it's very important that the intent to purchase needs to be continued all the way up till the shipment is actually delivered. And then which comes to the next point. How do you manage COD orders effectively, right? There are two parts that we identify. Just before dispatching, why don't you send a nudge to your customers and say, why don't you, pay now and get an extra 10-15% discount? And this is something that we've seen a lot of brands do actually. But unfortunately, a lot of the conversion rate here is not that high, primarily because Indian consumers don't trust. That's the biggest problem. So until unless you get a notification an order has been delivered or an order has been dispatched for delivery, you're not going to be paying online because you don't know whether the order will come or not, right? And that comes to the second point. How do you convert COD orders to prepaid? And we have brands like Biko and Bedden are doing that, where while in transit, we are able to send these notifications out to the consumer, and they are able to convert it online by getting some 20-25 rupees discount, 5-10% discount. And essentially what's going to happen is that you will be able to convert an order to a sale. You will have instant revenue realization. And third and most importantly, downstream problems like courier not delivering because it's a COD order is going to be removed, because prepaid RTO percentage is sub 1%, right? So makes a lot of sense to enable such practices in your organization. Now coming to the most challenging part, and I think so this is somewhere a lot of people keep asking, how do you solve for? Brands today, what they do once they get the order, they're going to spend some time figuring out which courier to select. They have like tens of couriers to figure out, probably hard code some rule. Okay, zone A mein ye bhej do, same city, national, rest of India mein ye bhej do. All that concept keeps going, but that's not smart decision. That's operating blindly based on some gut feeling or some anecdotal instances, which directs me to what are these things on which you operate, which is either you put cheaper fare or more coverage or faster delivery. And what we have seen, 70% of brands actually go for cheaper fare couriers, right? They're not even focusing on spending time and effort to understanding performances of brand. And they are then reactively saying, hey, this courier was bad because you selected this or we selected this and things like that, right? So more proactive nature of courier selection is something we currently still do not see being leveraged by most brands in India. And obviously, if you end up selecting something which is not a courier who's not dependable just because he was cheap, you end up having the shipment undelivered, and the consumer and brand end up with one moment, which is what the hell is going on, right? You don't want to be there. And then you again have to redispatch, again end up selecting another courier which might not work because you're trying to save cost, and think it's a vicious cycle that keeps happening. And then at that point, consumer has lost trust on the brand. Now, in this particular slide, what I've tried to capture is what do you need to do as a brand, right? each courier has different capability across the country. Some are good in north, some are good in east, some are good in west, some are down south, some are very good in express service, some are same day delivery service. But how do you identify and programmatically drive the selection, right? So what you're looking at are three couriers, their heat maps on RTOs, right? The first courier is Amazon, the second courier is Delivery, and third courier is Blue Dart. Now, I I was watching Mirzapur season two few days back, and I said, "Hey, let's see what's happening on Mirzapur," right? And then I started double downing on that information, and I came across that Amazon only has 16.1% RTO, Delivery has 23.75% RTO in Mirzapur. Blue Dart, which is so counterintuitive, actually has 26.7%. So capability cannot be generalized for couriers because it keeps varying based on how they've planned capacity, how their warehouses are planned, how their on fleet ground people have planned, so on and so forth. But I believe that courier capability keeps changing and you need to be more efficient in selecting that. And it's not just on pin code. When are you shipping? The time is very critical, right? I took deliveries data to see does it marginally change. Delivery during last quarter last year had 29.63% RTO in Mirzapur versus in the first quarter just 19%. And the order volumes have not changed drastically. But what has changed is that the festive season leads to hub chokes because Flipkart and Amazon bombards the hubs of these 3PLs. And a lot of the lanes are also choked. So what we realize that there are more tag breaches happening because shipments are not being able to get connected rightly on time, because of which consumer intent to buy goes out. And then eventually what happens is you have RTOs happening. So if you look, OTP verified RTOs, which is what consumers provide as an OTP to cancel that I don't need it, that is at 38% compared to 29% in this particular quarter. So it's interesting how demand load on the supply network can actually determine which courier works, which courier doesn't work. So to further elude on this point, right, we picked out how courier companies operate, right? Very critical to understand. So couriers don't typically just have one route through which they'll send from point A to point B, right? Now, in this particular case, we took took a lot of shipments and analyzed from Thane to Bhatinda in Punjab. And typically delivery express as a courier says, hey, I'll take 4 to 5 days. Now, if you look at route A, which is this particular route, goes from Thane to Mumbai airport, Mumbai to Chandigarh airport, then from Chandigarh airport it's connected to Ramgarh and then Bhatinda. Typically, this route takes anything between 4 to 5 days to get delivered, and it gets delivered. So we have seen a good decent delivery rates here. But as soon as the route changes to route B, as more checkpoints are added, and because it's not a frequented route and not something that is prioritized, the tag on this route actually become 11 days. And 85% of orders that we saw that were going on this route eventually got RTO'd, primarily because the shipment took such a long time to get delivered, to go out for delivery, right? Now, what if this problem exists within a courier? How would it look like if it is across couriers, right? So same destination point, pickup point, we took Blue Dart information and we saw that Blue Dart has a much better service because it follows a different route. So if there are chokes happening in Jaipur and Chandigarh, because Blue Dart routes it via Delhi, and Delhi has a better order processing capability, primarily because of the sheer volume that it gets, it makes a lot more sense to select Blue Dart on this route, even though it might be like 4 or 5 rupees extra cost. So there are so many moving attributes that one needs to focus on before eventually planning that, hey, I'm going to ship on this basis, right? So this is where, like largely, just summarizing, what we have seen so far is urban India e-commerce is diversifying, and quick commerce is very, very important if you are going to look at urban cities, certain particular verticals. Bharat India is key to e-commerce growth. If you guys are not focusing right now, couple of years down the line, you might not be able to deliver value. Then obviously you are personalizing checkout is key for lowering RTOs. You've got address verification, which is damn important. You've got consumer engagement, which is very key because you need to have conversational commerce. And lastly, it's important that courier allocation needs to be data driven, cannot be just a gut based anecdotal allocation philosophy. So yeah, we'll open up to questions now.
So Saloni has asked, any thoughts on the possible economic model to attain profitability in tier 2, tier 1, not just for quick commerce, but e-commerce in general? Any 1, 2 key factors you'd advise as pivotal?
Yeah, so tier 1, tier 2, I think largely distributed warehousing is the way forward. If you're able to do that, you're going to save a ton of money on shipping. So the cost unit economics for having distributed warehousing has a marginal increase in cost versus having centralized warehousing if you are trying to dispatch for tier 1 and tier 2 cities, right? So it makes more sense to have warehouses distributed in a manner that you typically end up doing regional deliveries rather than doing something that Kapiva does really, really well. These guys have set up a 12 warehouse concept, which brings most of their shipments under regional areas. Next question, I think so, is do you see quick commerce and hyperlocal commerce plugging in on ONDC? ONDC is
Got
still,
it.
I think so, too
Another question
early,
is,
not
since a fair
something.
number of address mistakes might be
Yeah, sorry, that. Yeah, so I was saying ONDC is still too early days to concur on what will work, what will not work. But definitely, we will see a lot of 3PLs hopping onto the ONDC channel primarily because it makes sense to for them to be able to receive orders from different receive orders from different channels, right? They don't want to be channel dependent. They want to be channel agnostic. So 3PL is definitely something that will come on ONDC. But if you look at quick commerce and hyperlocal commerce, hyperlocal maybe quick commerce, I don't think so, because what happens is Swiggy would not want its customer base being accessed or its restaurants being accessed by directly by a 3PL or let's say a Dunzo delivery system, right? There's another question I think that Ravi asked, what about the discipline of delivery agents? I think so. That's something uh, that's 3PLs. It's a high attrition space. Every 2 days you will see people leaving and joining and coming. Doesn't make the very difficult to execute. But one thing, I was on a call with Amazon team, ATS team, and they have a very strict policy. So if you raise issues for delivery boys, and I think everyone should, they are penalized after a proper uh, analysis on what happened. Then RCA is done, and eventually people do get terminated. But I believe India is still not there where discipline of delivery agents is something that is something that can be solved for. But yeah, I think so. We need to be more vocal about these issues directly with our 3PLs.
Oh, I think we have a bunch of questions now. What, aside from RTOs, are the key parameters on which delivery companies can be judged? It's an interesting question.
How do you judge delivery companies? I think so. It's pretty. I think so. The last
Am I
few.
audible?
Yeah. Hi, Ravi.
See, my question is regards to this discipline in terms of on-ground discipline. I have experienced a lot that these delivery boys create a lot of nuisance on the streets, and there is no control from the companies. Like, say, example, if I have to give Dunzo or Swiggy or Zomato or any take any quick commerce company, they don't have any control over these delivery agents. They will break their they will break signals. They will get in wrong lanes, and uh, they will drive fast. They will they will create nuisance on the street, and there is no control over from the company by any chance, except that if we raise these kind of questions, the companies will say, oh, we do provide them insurance, we do provide them these medical things and all the stuff, and that is where the company close their hands in terms of taking care of delivery agents. Instead, by my total, like, my question is, in this quick commerce, instead of this 10 minutes or 20 minutes delivery, if the standard policies define 45 minutes delivery, so delivery agents can deliver the products at ease. They didn't need to create any nuisance on the streets. Company do the business, and still at 45 minutes is a decent time. Like if I go 5 years back or 10 years back, if I have to go,
Ravi,
if I have to,
I think we have your question, so I think we'll let Shyam
yeah.
take it. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah. So Ravi, I completely understand where you're coming from, and unfortunately, because it's a privatized sector, very difficult to make it regulatory driven. So we'll definitely try to see how these 3PL companies go about managing these delivery agents. But I personally believe that this is not a problem just that we face in India. It's a problem across the globe. Very hard to uh, you cannot change human behavior, right? If even if you put processes and you invest a lot of money in how to be professional, there are certain things, and the kind of blue collar workforce you're looking at, it's going to be difficult driving those values. But coming back to the question that Jatin asked, Jatin, sorry, I missed it. Was it what are the metrics you look at tracking delivery companies?
Yeah, what metrics can you judge delivery companies apart from RTO?
Yeah, so there are multiple things, right? So if I have to break down RTO, there are two concepts. There's a concept of a leading indicator and a lagging indicator, right? So lagging indicators are essentially RTO. After an RTO has been done, you know, okay, these are problems with courier companies. But the leading indicator is how timely are shipments getting picked up, number one. Number two, how how much time is it taking to take from your pickup city to destination city, right? If your if the commitment is 5 days and the product has not reached by the fourth day, there is no way the delivery is happening on the fifth day. So a metric that we follow is, which is what is called a stat, right? First OFD. So rather, one step prior to that is your shipment in the destination city, and what is the timeline that you're seeing across courier companies? So that's an internal metric that we track, and a lot of brands do that. In fact, I know a lot of companies, platform based companies, are also doing that. But I think that that's the first and foremost metric on the leading side that you need to fix for. Second, you also need to ex, uh, understand that deliveries are not going to happen on the first go itself. So if you're saying, hey, I'm going to get it delivered in 7 days, you need to get it delivered in 7 days. You need to have the product attempted for delivery within 5 days, because you will have multiple attempts, and there could be n number of reasons why the delivery did not happen. But I believe the right way to look at is the pickup happening within 48 hours? As the first metric. Second, whether the committed SLA, if let's say it's 5 days, whether the shipment is reaching the destination on fourth day or not. That's very important to track. And the third metric is the first attempt strike rate, which is essentially, are you able to get the shipment delivered on the first attempt itself? So some couriers have very high, in certain pin codes, have very high first attempt, because they have been able to train the delivery boys well and plan well. But in some locations, because it's franchisee driven, you don't get high first attempt strike rate. So you probably want to shift to someone who is not operating on a franchisee model there, and then probably work with those couriers. Uh, Moving on, I think so. There's some few more questions. Any thoughts on consumer education to reduce incorrect addresses since a fair? Yeah, so this is something that we are doing. Saloni, thanks for the question. We are doing on the checkout side. Uh, we are What we are doing in the checkout side is, because it's inbuilt with our address verification, we prompt if you put a wrong address in there. So if you, let's say, just randomly put something, we say, hey, this address seems incorrect, please put the right address. Now, because we do not want to be hampering the brand's uh, flow or experience on how the orders come through, what we are doing here is we are telling them, uh, we are flagging them out once the data is coming to the system. But as more maturity in brands come along and checkout companies develop and become mainstream, we'll be then able to enforce onto consumers, hey, this looks incorrect, this pin code doesn't match in the address that you put, and then force them to have the right information in place.
Thanks, Shyam. I think that's all the questions we can take. Amit, I see your question, but what we'll do is we'll probably connect you to Shyam and the team separately so that you can have a conversation. Thanks so much, Shyam, for doing this. And we'll also connect anyone who's interested to reach out to us, and we'll connect you to the Swift team for any further discussion that you may have. Shyam, any closing thoughts from your end?
No, guys, I think great time to be part of the e-commerce journey. I think a lot of companies have already done the hard work, but uh, just be focusing on certain things. And I think COD and RTO cannot be brushed aside. So try to build a strategy around it rather than complaining later that, hey, what happened to me? And right. So it needs to be a thought before you start the business rather than thinking it afterwards and then being an afterthought. Yeah, pretty much that there. Thanks guys for coming and really appreciate. I think you can reach out to the Kalari team. They can help me connect with you guys, and happy to take these questions, like very interesting questions. Some guys I think had question around Go Quick also, so happy to answer there. They, by the way, they're doing an excellent job.